Hi guys, in this video I'm going to continue my French defense series. Previously I did the advanced variation, and in this video I'm going to cover the knight c3, Winawer and classical. Let's get started. e4, e6, d4, d5, and now knight c3. And now the main moves black can play here is either takes on e4, knight f6, or bishop b4. I'll just quickly show you the idea behind d takes e4. This tends to be a more drawish variation for black, trying to just keep a very solid position, and the black player tends to be happy with a draw when playing this d takes e4 here. Knight takes e4, and now you can either play with knight d7, knight f3, knight g6, bishop g5, bishop b7. This is known as Rubinstein, which is pretty solid, or you can play bishop d7, probably the move I prefer a little better, because after bishop d7, knight f3, bishop c6, you get bishop outside of this pawn being blocked in by this pawn. And now instead of knight g3, play continues with knight f6, bishop g5, knight d7, bishop d3. Should I say to go bishop e2, just because I'm going to show you something in a minute. Bishop e7, castles, c4. So the reason I put bishop on e2 is just to make d5 more of a threat. And as soon as white starts playing c4, the threat going d5, black normally just swaps his bishop off for either a knight on e4 or a knight on f3. And after he takes, he just plays c6. And so what black's gained from doing this is, instead of playing having these c and e pawns, when the bishop was on c8, he's managed to get rid of this bishop, and now he can play these moves without a problem, because before, if he had the bishop back on c8, then his bishop would be completely blocked in by these pawns and would become a bad bishop. So here, black just has a very solid position. It's hard to break down, and a lot of exchanges are going to happen. The black's going to play h6, white will exchange on f6. A lot of these central pawns will probably end up coming off, and then the rooks can come off on one of the files, and it tends to just lead to equal endgame. And so people who play d takes e4 are just trying to get a draw, maybe if they're playing against a high rated opponent and they're not really looking to win. So that's briefly that one. The move I recommend is bishop b4, and here this is the main move with the Winawer. And e5, I'll cover some of the sidelines in a minute. e5, c5, and now it's a3, or there's bishop d2 here. Bishop d2, we can just go knight e7, and now there's either a3 or there is knight b4, knight b5. a3 or knight b5. If a3, we take, bishop takes, b6, b4, queen c7, knight f3, knight d7, bishop e2, knight c6, castles. Black just gets a pretty equal position. And if knight b5, we take, castle, c3, knight b6, f4, queen b6, knight f3, bishop d7, takes, queen takes, knight b d4, takes, queen back to d6, bishop d3, and now just bishop b5. And black is also doing very well here, he's just equal. And the other move white can play in that variation I just showed you, instead of going c3 here, they could actually just take on c5 if they want, and then knight d7, attacking both these pawns, queen c3, knight c6, knight f3, b6. So black just sacrifices a pawn here, queen takes b6, and gets very good compensation for the pawn. It's going to play knight into c5 into e4. There's a lot of pressure on e5 pawn here. There could be pressure against the b2 pawn, the queen. Also the c2 pawn after bishop a6, rook fc8, and black's got a very clear plan. So, but the main move I'm going to go into a lot of detail about is a3. And now here is take, knight e7, queen g4, Another move you can play here is queen c7. I played this before, and after queen g4 you can try f5, and e takes f6 is no good because knight takes f6 and black gets a very rapid development. So here queen g3, knight e7, white can't take here because weaker, rook g8 takes, and eventually it's going to be a check on c3. So they tend to go bishop d2. Now ready to play queen takes g7. We can castle and something like h4, and takes, and knight c3. Something like this happens. Oops, b6, knight e2. You get this sort of position. White black's trying to put its pieces into c5, into c4, swap off light square bishops. You can also play this way too. You can also play b6 first. He wants to swap off light square bishop a6, and then something like knight e2, ready to come to f4, attack this pawn, and something like takes, queen takes, something like this basically, and this rook's going to swing over. So this is another way to play. It's pretty solid for black, but it's not the main move I recommend. What I'd play is knight e7, and now queen g4, queen c7, some poison pawn variation, g8 takes, and now we take on d4, threatening queen c3, knight e2 is played. Now we can play knight bc6, f4. If they ever try, it doesn't really matter, bishop d7, I'll show you now. If they ever try this here, so he takes d4, we can always just play knight takes d4, and now knight takes d4, queen c3 checks, winning for black. It's the same before as well. So normally white will bring back his queen to d3 before he takes on d4, and now his queen's on d3, so he's actually protecting c3 square. So now we will take on c3, knight takes c3, threatening knight b5 and knight into d6. So we play a6 and now rook b1. Now rook b1 setting up a nice trap here for white, because castles looks like a logical move but actually loses. If black castles, then there is a winning move here for white, so I'll let you pause the video and try find that move now. Okay, so I'm going to continue the video. The winning move for white is queen takes a6, and now the pawn takes a6, the bishop takes a6, check, the rook covers the whole b file, and so now black is forced to play queen b7, and after something like rook takes b7, white's already 3 pawns up and threatening knight b5, knight d6 check, might be checkmate, but also does go a check with the bishop. This is not the way for black to play. So after rook b1, you always got to watch out for these traps, so you just play knight a7 first, and now you can castle. So after knight a7, then knight a5, sorry, knight a5, h4, now we play knight f5, knight f5, threatening to go rook g3, rook h3, and now the main line goes castles, h5, knight into c4, h6, rook g6, h7, rook h8, and black tends to improve the position of queen c5, then bishop c6, and yeah, this is like the main line. It's very theoretical, and a lot of engine analysis is done on this position. But you know, you can play this line, but what I'd really like to play is a sideline, which also leads to very good chances for black to win, and also white won't be so well prepared. So the move I recommend is after h4, you just go king f8 here. Now the idea is after h5, king g7, h6 check, king h8, h7, rook g7. You can see why my arrows. Now black's got the same plan, knight f5, rook g3, but also he's got this very nice plan of just rook c8, because after you can use this rook on c8 now because the king is blockading this pawn instead of the rook, so the king's actually quite safe behind this pawn from any attacks, but now it allows this rook to be free to come to the c file and put pressure on the knight and c2. So this is the line I'd recommend, and it's most likely that white doesn't know what to do against this line, and it's not hard. It's not easy to find a way to play against this line, because it's really, how would you attack the king here? It's very difficult. And rook after rook c8, knight f5, these sort of moves, black's going to get a really nice position, very active pieces. Knight can come to c4 as well, and it's hard to see what exactly white's going to play. For example, say white plays something like a4 here. The idea of now bringing the bishop out this way, maybe to d6, and also stopping any bishop b5 ideas. Okay, so now black can continue with something like rook c8, and putting pressure on this knight. Okay, so let's say the bishop comes and defends on d2. We can play knight f5, threatening rook to g3. So they play rook h3, and now we can play knight c4. Still putting pressure on the c file, maybe tactics taking here and then maybe taking on c3. And you can already see that black has a really nice position. He's a pawn down, but the pawn that the white's gained isn't really doing much. It's a threat, but if the king moves, it's going to be a threat. It's going to promote. But if the king just stays on h8, it actually provides a really nice protection for the black king, because white can't get rid of this pawn unless we let him by taking. We never need to take this pawn until the endgame. Because this is actually just blocking off this whole file, and there's not many other ways that the white can get to attack the king. The only other way I can see is getting this bishop into f6 somehow. But as you can see, that's very difficult, especially when it's blocked in by these two central pawns. And if he tries to do something like king d1, bishop e1, bring the bishop all the way around to h4, we can always just take it off if needs to be. Or as soon as this bishop starts moving around this side, the knight can become potentially weak, and it's very difficult for white to actually do that. And already you can see it's very hard to find a move for white. This bishop's completely tied down because of the threat of rook takes g2, any bishop e2 moves. This bishop's pretty tied down to defend the c3 knight, and it can't really improve. Going backwards doesn't help, going forwards definitely doesn't help, so that's pretty paralysed. The rook's paralysed because it's got to stop the rook coming to g3. The queen's pretty paralysed, it can't really go anywhere. The only squares it can go to is like e2, which is no good. f3 is also not that good because it's not allowing knight d4. This rook's pretty paralysed, it's on a pretty nice file at the moment, putting pressure on b7. It can't really be improved as much. If you try something like rook b3, it looks like a nice defensive move, but it could get annoying for white, because now if this knight ever moves, we can take on a4 with a tempo, hitting the rook. So the only piece that can move for white is this knight, but it can't come forwards. It can only go backwards. So say they go knight e2 here, then we're actually just winning the pawns. So they actually can't move this knight either. There's a lot of pressure on the c2 pawn now, so it's very hard to see what white can play here. We can just play b6 just to get this pawn protected by the knight, and then go queen c5, and just gradually increase our position, queen c5, and then go queen into g1, maybe rook takes g2 ideas. And yeah, as far as I can see, I can't see a way for white to actually get a good plan together here. I don't see how he's going to attack us, or I don't know, put black in a mess. So I really recommend this line, and the reason I think it's so much better is because just having this rook on an active c file makes this position so much harder for white to play, because before the rook is on h8, it's not really doing anything, and now we've got a whole extra 5 points worth in the game, and our king's well protected, and so we've got the rook on pressuring on the g file, rook and queen on the c file. We've got an isolated pawn here on a4, which has always got to be protected, and yeah, this is actually very difficult for white to come up with a plan here. So this is what I'd recommend. Okay, so let's go back to the sidelines after bishop b4. Have a look. So knight c3, bishop b4. Okay, so there's a couple moves that white can play. So if they go queen g4, this is no good because now knight f6, queen takes, knight rook g8, queen h6. So this is just a worse variation than before because they don't even get the h pawn. Rook g6, queen goes back to e3, we can take on e4, bishop d3, now just f5, and already black has a really nice position. We're threatening moves like c5, we can take on g2. The knight on c3 is also very weak, so queen g4 is not very popular. Bishop d3 here, so not so great either because it can just take, and the bishop has to take, so the pin. Knight f6, bishop back to d3, c5, and it really doesn't make much sense just going bishop d3 to go take, to go back again. Just low loss of tempo here, so already this is bad, and that's the thing at a3, wasting more tempo, and black gets a really nice position against these double pawns. You can just put the rook on c file, really nice bishop diagonal, and yeah, this is nice for black. a3 is another option. We can just take, free pawn, queen g4, knight f6, takes, rook g8, queen h6. So again, they don't get this h7 pawn here. We just go c5, counter it in the center, knight d2, knight bd7, h3, queen a5, bishop d2, b6. After c4, we go queen a4, and already we're threatening these double pawns here. And we can play bishop a6 to put more pressure on them, and as soon as we castle queenside, we're going to have a really nice position. So a3 is not so popular. Knight g2 is a little better, and after takes a3, it's not good to try take and hold on to this pawn. For example, if you try to take here, knight takes, put pressure back on the pawn, and then say something like f5, because if you go knight f6, they can go bishop, knight f6, they go bishop g5, threatening to take here. So if you really want to try hold on onto that pawn, you try placing like f5, and this is really not very good. I've played this in a game and I got really badly beaten. So yeah, don't try to be greedy here. They just play something like f3. These pawns are really weak. After the bishop comes to c4 as well, and yeah, it's not good. So just go bishop e7. After a3, bishop e7, and after knight takes e4, knight f6, knight 2 g3, castles, bishop e2, knight b7, swords b6. It's normal development. Bishop f3. It's good to watch out for the discovered check and winning the rook. So we play rook b8 first. Bishop b7 is no good, because there's a check, and after we take, there's a takes on b7. So we play rook b8 first, and after rook e1, bishop b7, and now we're ready to play c5 and counter in the centre, and this is equal. And the other move that white can try here is e takes d5, and after e takes d5 is sort of like an exchange French. Bishop d3, knight c6, a3, takes, queen f6. It's played just continues like this, and I use castle here. And already I think that black's got a nice position. White's still got double pawns on the c file. So yeah, this is a nice position for white. So let's cover the knight f6 variation here. So knight f6, and I'll show you what my recommendations in these lines, just in case you're a knight f6 player, not so much bishop b4, not so aggressive. Okay, so let's start off with e5. I'd play knight back, f4, knight c5, knight 3, now queen b6. And I played queen b6 before knight c6, so after any knight e4 lines, you can always put your queen on c6. For example, if you play knight c6 here, bishop b3, queen b6 isn't such a great move because now knight a4, and now I can't put my queen on c6 to attack this knight. I have to go queen a5 check, c3, and it's okay, but it gets a little blockaded. It really depends. Like b6 can be a good move here, and I played this before. Your opponent has to know bishop d2 this is the main move that makes this not so great. It just goes like this basically. You have to play c4 to stop them playing c4, and basically position gets pretty blockaded. So it depends if you don't mind playing like a solid position. But if they go bishop, say, to d3, then this is where this line's actually quite nice after bishop a6, because already now white castles, they've lost. Bishop takes d3, queen takes d3, queen takes a4. You'll be amazed how many people miss this idea. And the problem they also have is that they take on a6, then we can just take with the queen, and already we're stopping them white from castling here. And if they try to go queen e2 to swap queens off, then we end up winning the knight again. So it is a little tricky, this line, but you can try this. But I prefer just queen b6 straight away, and now if knight a4, we can go queen c6, attacking this knight, and obviously if they get knight back to c3, we can just play a6, bishop b3, b5, queen d2, and already we're getting a really big attack. They castle, we can start going c4 and b4, and white's in a lot of trouble here. So knight c3 doesn't make any sense, so most people would play c3 here. And now we can play c5, c4, and the reason we play c4 is because now we're threatening b5, winning a pawn, because the knight would have to come to c5 and we win a pawn. So white would play something like b3. Okay, and now we can just play b5, knight d2, knight bd2, take. We put pressure on this pawn, but I'm not quite sure we can take it just yet, because queen takes might be a problem. a6, a4, a lot of pressure on this b pawn. So I actually had a game in my Terra final round 3, which I have the video up on my channel, exact game of this line, and I played knight b6 here, and now I'm threatening to take on b3. I think my opponent played b4. No, she didn't play b4. I think she went 8. No, did she go a4 or bishop d2? I think she played bishop d2 first. Yeah, bishop d2, and now a5, a4, something like this. And I went b4. I think I went bishop a6 first here. And yeah, this is quite a nice line to play as black. There's a lot of pressure. It's going b4, and then if they take, you can go c3. And already black's the one who's on the attack here. So yeah, do check out that game. It was this involves that line in that game. It was against Maria Wang. So yeah, let's look for that game. Wang against Clark. Okay, so I recommend this queen c6 line against that stuff. If they play bishop g5 here, which is another option. Yeah, bishop g5. It's a couple of moves I've played here. Normally I play this one. I take on e4, and I have an interesting line here from that Morozevich plays. Bishop e7, bishop takes, pawn takes, and this double pawns looks really bad. Normally supposed to take the bishop, but yeah, g takes f6 is I think I first saw this Morozevich playing it. It's actually quite a nice idea. Knight f3, a6, and now saying just normal development. Bishop d3, we go b5. They might castle, bishop b7, queen e2, knight d7. I don't know, they might put rook on d1 or something, and then we can start playing moves like f5, knight g3, h5, threatening h4. So they put their rook on e1, maybe trying some tactics on taking on f5. We can play h4. Now they don't have time to take here. They don't want to take their knight. They want to take. Oops. They want to take their bishop, because it's in this position. So if I just play something like, I don't know. Say if I just play something like, bishop there actually helps a little bit. So if I just play some rubbish here, like rook g8, they're wanting to take, and they'll take back for the knight. So then there's more pressure against the bishop. But here, when we play h4, we don't allow them to take with the bishop, because they take the bishop, we take their knight. So, and if they try knight takes, this is not as good, because we can just take. The queen's already protecting the bishop, and now we're just going to play king f8 next move, and we're going to be a piece up. So bishop takes f5. We can just go king f8. It looks a little scary. You know, your king looks very wide open, but this is Completely fine. He's your piece up. Well, your piece of 2 pawns, and he's going to go play knight f6 or something, and you can start swapping off pieces on f3 if you want. But they're not going to do this. They have to play something like knight back to f1. Now we can play rook g8, putting a lot of pressure on g2. Now they might play knight e3, ready to take here. So move I recommend just play king f8, getting out any potential pins. If they ever play anything like a4, you can just push on with b4. And basically what white's going to do, say king h1, or black's going to do is just play something like knight f6 and put a knight on d5 or g4, and there's actually, black gets quite a nice position. It's quite hard to break down. And another way white can play against this line, knight f3 a6. They can also play with bishop d3, b5, and now queen e2 here first, bishop b7, castles queen side. Now let's get rook g8, putting pressure on g2. If the knight retreats, we can just go h5, threatening h4. Yeah, and white might play something like, yeah, they tend to play rook into rook he1 first, and then we can play knight d7. And also what you're trying to do here is go bishop d5, just cement your bishop on this square. So they tend to play something like king b1. I'm just giving moves which I there's no like theory on this, it's just what I tend to get played against me the most. Something like king f8, preparing f5 or something. Yeah, it's hard to see what white's going to do here. What plan? Okay, maybe, I don't know. Maybe queen e3. Queen e3 maybe, I don't know. But it doesn't really matter what they do, you just play the same sort of plans. You can even play f5 here straight away, knight g3, and then go for h5 like this, and then maybe rook he1 for any just takes on f5 tactic, king f8, king b1, h4, knight back to f1. And actually this is probably the better way to play it, just playing f5 this way. I guess don't bother putting your rook on g8 because I never really take on g2. It's pretty dangerous if you do that because they can get queen e3, come into h6. So just having your rook here means the queen can never come in this way. Bishop protects this square, rook protects this square. After knight f1 we just play something like knight d7, get our knight into f6, and say if they reposition a knight, we go knight f6, put our knight on d5, and yeah, black actually gets a very good position. I've never lost with this opening in all competitions. So yeah, well, any of the board games I've lost with it online, like on time and things. But over the board, I've never lost with this, and I've played it probably about 10 times. I think I've got it over the board, something around about that. And I've beaten some very good players. So I do recommend this line against bishop g5. Or you could just play the normal variations. If I didn't play d takes, I would play bishop b4, e5, h6, play the McCutcheon, knight e4, bishop d3. You know, they tend to play queen g4 first, I think. Then you can even play g6 here, or king f8. I tend to play g6, bishop d3, take, c5, h4, and then you play like this basically, knight f3. See, knight e2 is no good because c4 is going to win the bishop, they have to take down here. So knight f3, and then you don't want to play c4 because you want to play something like queen a5, putting a lot of pressure on d4 because it's pin. But do check this move, or I'm not sure with queen a5 it'll be okay here. I don't play this much. I do know this is what you can play. I'm not sure with queen a5 or if there's any bishop takes g6 ideas. I don't think there is. Because I sometimes play this online. Take. I think you can just run with king d7. Because if there's any checks. Actually, there's a check here, isn't there? Queen g7 check. Maybe that's not too bad though. Maybe, just wonder if you can do this. Check, king takes, and now taking on d4, launching a counterattack. Yes, you're exchanged down, but this is actually a big threat. Queen takes c3, and white can't stop it. Knight can't take here because we take back and there's a pin against the king. So this actually might be okay. And if they try something like a check, this actually helps us. We just get our bishop into the game. Now our rook can come over as well. I don't really see how they're going to defend this pawn, and it could lead to trouble. So they do something like this. We can take a check. King can't get to back rank, so we win the rook, and if we do that, we're going to win this pawn as well. So I guess they're going to have to do something like, I don't know, they put the rook on this square so we don't win that pawn. Check. King comes this way. And now you can probably get his bishop into the game. Bishop check and things. So I don't know, this might be one way to play, but I don't know. It looks a little risky, so you don't want to take a risk here. Also, I don't know which one's better here. I know there's two options in this position to play g6 or king f8. I'm not quite sure which one's the better move. I think g6 is more popular, but king f8 might be safer to play, because after king f8 there's going to be none of these bishop tricks. I'm taking here, for example, bishop d3, takes, c5, h4, knight c6, knight f3, queen a5, and there's going to be none of these sacking tricks on g6. So this might be a better way to play. And now we're threatening to take on d4, and yeah, black tends to get a good position in these lines. But yeah, definitely do check this up. I'm just recommending this to you. My main preference would be the d takes e4. That's the one I know a lot better and play myself. But yeah, this is also a pretty decent line to play also. So to finish off with, to finish this video, I'm going to show you one last thing, and it's this knight c6 move. And I actually quite like this move. I've been playing it recently, and it's basically a guillemard. The guillemard, for those who don't know, is like against a Tarrasch. You can play knight c6 here, and this is actually quite a good move. The guillemard, so it's attacking this pawn, and play continues on knight g3, knight f6, e5, knight d7, and now say after bishop d3, f6. So this pawn's already been attacked, so they have to take, and then you take back the queen, castles, bishop d6. Oh no, not castles. After queen takes, we're attacking the pawn, so they have to play c3 first. Bishop d6, castles, and the reason I really like this line, it's already got a nice f-file, and we're already threatening to play e5 next move and break out of a monster position. For example, I always get something like rook e1 play against me here, and after e5, threatening e4, so they tend to take and take. Back of our knight, and already you can see what a great position black has. The knight can't take, so it's always going to be check on f2, bishop's being attacked, and so say the bishop moves, we're threatening bishop g4 as well, so they might play something like bishop e2, and we can just put our bishop into g4, swing our rook over, probably get our king off this diagonal, and yeah, black gets a really nice position, especially against the Tarrasch. So what I'm trying to do here is when they play knight c3, knight c6, it's a little similar to that line. So in knight g3, something like this happens, bishop d3, f6, castle, bishop d6, and so they go bishop g5, we can drop our queen back, rook e1, we can castle, and yeah, it's a little similar. Now we're ready to play e5 next move and break out in the center. So it's got very similar ideas. It's not quite as good as against the Tarrasch, just because when we play e5 and the Tarrasch, there's no knight, because the knight's on d2. It's not attacking this d5 pawn. So preferably we want the knight to be on d2, because when we play e5, this pawn's not so weak, especially when the queen's normally on f6. we can't play e5 because it's going to be knight takes d5 attacking the queen. So it is a little better against the Tarrasch, and yeah, next video on the way will probably be on the Tarrasch, and I'll show you a couple of good lines that I recommend against the Tarrasch, and this line will be one of them that I'll show you. I also recommend knight f6 and bishop e7, and some other moves. So yeah, that's it on the French Winawer classical variations. So I hope this helps you in your games and that you can get some success. And yeah, just let me know how it goes, and if you have any questions, please do leave a comment and I'll try to get back to you guys as soon as I can. Okay, yeah, see you next time.